A series of chilling discoveries has swept across Phoenix, Arizona, their implications too deliberate to ignore. It begins with a string of tragedies. 13 individuals tied to the death of Kareem Terrell, a young black man whose life ended tragically in police custody, are found dead in a grim and coordinated mass suicide. By the end of the day, the city reels, as each suicide reveals a hauntingly similar story. Handwritten notes confessing guilt and regret, penned in shaky, uneven strokes. These admissions are found in homes, cars, and personal belongings, the words steeped in a shared burden of complicity. Together they paint a harrowing picture of accountability that arrives too late. Officer Daniel Kessler, the first to engage Kareem on the night of his arrest, was a 10-year veteran of the force, with a reputation for excessive force that preceded him. Under his watch, Kareem's arrest escalated with terrifying speed, his cries for help swallowed by the wail of sirens. Kessler's body is discovered in his garage, a single bullet wound to the head. His note, pinned to the workbench, reads simply, "I broke a man, and it broke me." Officer James Porter, Kessler's partner that night, had restrained Kareem as he pleaded for breath. Known for following orders but devoid of compassion, Porter writes in his note about the unrelenting pain of replaying the arrest in his dreams. Pills scattered across his coffee table tell the rest of the story. Officer Reggie Hall, who transported Kareem to the station, admits in his note to ignoring Kareem's pleas for water and medical attention during the ride. Hall's body hangs from a ceiling fan in his apartment, his note taped to the door. Sergeant Martha Reynolds, the commanding officer overseeing the arrest, writes in her note about dismissing Kareem's visible distress in favor of procedure over humanity. She locks herself in her bathroom and succumbs to toxic fumes from a gas canister, her note clutched tightly in her hand. The remaining individuals are those who held custody of Kareem in the hours leading to his death. Lieutenant Eric Vaughn, responsible for Kareem's intake, disregarded his complaints of severe pain and allowed him to be placed in a holding cell. Vaughn is found slumped over his desk at home, a bottle of poison emptied beside him. Corrections Officer Sharon Leeds, assigned to monitor Kareem during her rounds, falsified reports claiming she had checked on him. Her lifeless body is discovered in her car, the engine running in a sealed garage with multiple cuts on her wrist. Nurse Tina Marshall, the on-call medical staff, dismissed Kareem's deteriorating condition as attention-seeking. Her neighbor finds her body in their pool, face down. Her note says, "I should have listened." Captain Lawrence Gibbs, tasked with overseeing the jail, confesses in his note to downplaying concerns raised by junior officers. His body is recovered beneath a local bridge. Corrections officers Patrick Rivera and Kyle Brown, who mocked Kareem as he lay on the cell floor struggling for breath, meet similarly tragic ends. Rivera takes his own life with a shotgun in his basement, while Brown is found hanging from a tree in his backyard. Deputy Warden Joseph Walker, whose indifference caused critical delays in Kareem's treatment, leaves behind a note brimming with self-loathing before ending his life with a firearm in his office. Finally, Warden Amanda Hurst, who held ultimate responsibility for the facility, pens a chilling farewell. "The weight of his death will never leave me. It is more than I can bear." Her body is found in her bedroom, a noose tightly secured around her neck. Kareem's death had already become a rallying cry for reform. Arrested on minor charges, his pleas for medical attention went ignored during processing. Surveillance footage captured his agony, writhing in pain, struggling to stand, and eventually collapsing. By the time an ambulance arrived, it was too late. His death certificate cited untreated internal bleeding as the cause. The mass suicides shocked the city, their eerie synchronicity raising questions that linger like a specter over every conversation. Was it guilt that consumed these 13 individuals, or was something far more sinister at play? Kareem Terrell's case resolved. Kareem Terrell's case resolved. Kareem Terrell's case resolved. The chill of a late February evening wraps itself around Denver like a cold embrace, the city lying beneath the heavy breath of winter. The sky, a vast canvas of ink-dark navy, stretches above the horizon where jagged silhouettes of the Rockies stand, their peaks dusted in the whisper of fresh snow that glows ghostly white under a watchful moon. Clouds drift sluggishly, tinged with bruised purple, promising the possibility of more snow before the night yields to dawn. Downtown Denver pulses with an understated life, its streets lined with buildings that stand like sentinels of glass and concrete. Warm lights from office windows flicker, casting golden reflections across slick pavements soaked by remnants of earlier flurries. Street lamps, tall and stoic, spill cones of amber light onto the sidewalks, illuminating occasional passers-by huddled in thick coats and scarves. Their hurried breaths form fragile, fleeting clouds that linger briefly before dissipating into the biting wind. The city lives but seems subdued, as if holding its breath. The hum of traffic echoes in fits and starts, tires hissing against wet streets and engines grumbling as cars navigate patches of ice. The rhythmic clack of a light rail train rolls down its track, adding a metallic symphony to the background. Pedestrians linger at crosswalks, their faces flushed pink from the cold, eyes darting under the soft glow of neon signs advertising diners and dive bars. In the Lodo district, historic brick buildings stand shoulder to shoulder, their facades dusted with frost, emanating a rugged charm that refuses to yield to the modern skyscrapers looming behind them. Warm, inviting light spills from a craft brewery onto the street, carrying laughter and the clink of glasses into the frosty night before the wind swallows it whole. The Platte River threads its way through the city, moving sluggishly, its dark surface flecked with shards of ice drifting lazily downstream. Quiet footprints mark the shadowed recesses of bridges where the homeless huddle around makeshift fires. Flames dance wildly, their orange tongues lapping at the cold as thin, crooked tendrils of smoke spiral upward into the night. Above, stars attempt to pierce the haze of light pollution, faint pinpricks of silver against the dark veil. The city exhales warmth from subway grates and steam vents, melting patches of snow, only to refreeze them moments later into delicate crystalline patterns. Denver's heartbeat pulses beneath the frost, a rhythm of resilience and quiet anticipation as winter's grip lingers, pressing against the world with its icy hand. The night feels eternal, yet fragile, the kind where moments etch themselves into the frost clinging to window panes. It is a night for secrets, solitude, and echoes of footsteps that remind the city it remains awake, waiting for whatever comes next. Denver International Airport stands like a sprawling modern colossus under the shadow of the evening sky, its silhouette marked by sweeping glass facades and the iconic undulating roof, frozen mid-crest like a wave. The terminal, a testament to ambition, gleams under a scatter of floodlights that cast a silvery hue across the tarmac, where jumbo jets slumber like great iron birds. Winter's chill clings to the air outside, sharp winds tugging at the coats of travelers hurrying from curbside drop-offs into the airport's cavernous expanse. Inside, the space unfolds into a realm of organized chaos. Denver, vast and sprawling, is its own world, a labyrinthine network of terminals and concourses linked by underground trains and moving walkways. The hum of hurried passengers and the rhythmic clatter of rolling suitcases fills the air. Tonight, the airport pulses with steady but subdued energy. Peak business hours have passed, giving way to the quieter rhythm of late evening. Gate areas thin out as some flights depart and others wait on the tarmac, their wingtips reflecting streaks of red and blue from taxiway lights. The main terminal, with its high ceilings and open spaces, hums with life. The announcer's voice echoes through the expanse, clear and authoritative, sparking ripples of movement. Flight 202 to Denver now boarding at gate C18, the announcement calls, sending weary passengers shuffling toward the gate. Families, business travelers, and lone wanderers weave through the terminal, clutching neck pillows and half-empty coffee cups. Outside, the airfield stretches like an asphalt desert, dotted with the gleaming tails of airliners under rows of amber and white lights. Planes taxi in a slow-motion ballet, engines rumbling like distant thunder, while others stand motionless, awaiting their turn to ascend. The plane touches down with a low rumble that vibrates through its steel frame, pulling passengers forward against their seatbelts. Outside, the sprawling expanse of Denver International Airport gleams under rows of lights like lines of fireflies in the dark. The plane taxis slowly, rolling past parked aircraft and the distant glow of terminal windows. Inside, warm cabin lights flicker on, chasing away the dim quiet of flight. Passengers stir, the hiss of the air systems replaced by the rustle of movement and the soft clicks of seatbelts being undone. The flight attendants move efficiently through the aisles, their practiced smiles offering reassurance. "Welcome to Denver, Colorado, where the local time is 8:17 p.m., an attendant announces. "Please remain seated until we reach the gate and keep your seatbelts fastened until the captain turns off the seatbelt sign." Passengers rise in staggered waves, stretching stiff limbs and reaching for overhead compartments. Bags emerge with tired hands, handles snapping into place. The scent of stale coffee, recycled air, and faint jet fuel fills the cabin. Rows empty one by one as travelers shuffle toward the jet bridge, a metallic corridor bathed in sterile fluorescent light. The air here is cooler, tinged with fast food, industrial cleaner, and a metallic hint of airplane exhaust. Beyond the jet bridge, the terminal sprawls in a long corridor, dotted with weary travelers. The hum of announcements and the clatter of baggage carts blends into a symphony of transients. Passengers move toward baggage claim or connecting gates, phones lighting up with reminders of lives paused mid-air, now resuming as though the hours spent above the clouds were merely an interlude. In the control room, fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow on the walls lined with monitors, displaying live feeds, satellite imagery, and encrypted logs. The atmosphere hums with the weight of strategy and caution. Dwayne sits in a chair that creaks under his shifting weight, his fingers pressed together, his expression steely. He has returned from a restless power nap, not to rest but to untangle the knots of exhaustion tightening in his chest. "Listen up," Dwayne begins, his voice carving through the tension. "We're about to engage with Agent Carter Davis, CIA, and I don't need to remind any of you what that means." The room shifts with unspoken acknowledgement as Dwayne's gaze sweeps over his team, his words a command threaded with the urgency of life and death. On the largest screen, Davis's image appears, a man with sharp cheekbones, a jaw set like stone, and hawk-like eyes beneath a perpetually furrowed brow. "Davis is field operations," Dwayne begins, his voice steady, each word deliberate. "Not just any field agent. He's the best. Years of embedded ops, counter-surveillance, and black site intelligence. The man's instincts are so sharp they might as well be honed steel. He walks into a room and doesn't just see exits. He maps out every weakness, every shadow that could conceal a threat." The team shifts in their seats, the weight of Dwayne's words settling over them like a heavy fog. This isn't just another retrieval. This is chess against a grandmaster, where the price of a miscalculation isn't just failure, it's exposure and potentially death. "Davis doesn't work without protocol," Dwayne continues, locking eyes with each team member as if searing the gravity of the moment into their minds. "First rule, he always follows a perimeter check. Even during downtime, he'll sweep the area. There are no loose ends with him. If he smells something off, he'll abort, and we won't get another chance." Max, the tech specialist, leans forward, his fingers poised over the keyboard. "What about his comms?" he asks, his voice tight with anticipation. "Jammed and under control," Dwayne replies, his tone clipped. "But that doesn't mean we're safe. Davis has a failsafe, a silent alarm he can trigger if he senses trouble. It's old school, non-digital, so it won't show up in our scans. If that goes off, backup will swarm in minutes." A hush falls over the room. The faint whir of cooling fans and the scent of stale coffee underline the fragility of the plan. Dwayne rubs a hand over his stubble, his eyes narrowing, as if he can see Davis standing right in front of him. "Davis's demeanor," Dwayne resumes, his voice lower but no less commanding, "is like a coiled spring. He's alert, but he won't show it. That means no sudden moves, no missteps. We need to be fluid and invisible. If he so much as catches a flicker out of place, a reflection, a footstep that shouldn't be there, it's over. This isn't a job for a sledgehammer. This needs the precision of a scalpel." The live feed on the monitors flickers, showing the surveillance team prepping on the ground. Dwayne exhales slowly, a shiver of tension leaving his body before he straightens. His gaze locks on Max and then shifts to the rest of the team. "This is it," he says, his voice dropping to a near whisper as though the walls themselves might betray him. "One shot. We slip in, swap the drive, and slip out without him ever suspecting, and if anything goes wrong..." He lets the silence hang, the unspoken truth heavy in the air. Standing, Dwayne pushes back his chair with a groan. He nods sharply. Move out. Stay sharp and stay quiet. Tonight, we dance with a ghost. Denver International Airport hums with the steady, ceaseless energy of late-night arrivals. The fluorescent lights cast long, sharp reflections on polished floors, while the faint scent of jet fuel mingles with the antiseptic aroma of disinfectant. Weary travelers shuffle through the terminal, their exhaustion palpable. Among them, Agent Carter Davis moves with the smooth, measured stride of a man who sees every inch of his surroundings. The flight from Atlanta had been quiet, but now, amidst the late-night bustle of one of the busiest airports in the country, Davis's instincts prickle. His dark, discerning eyes scan the concourse, taking in the flurry of activity, families tugging at carry-ons, business people glued to their phones, lone travelers moving with purpose. Potential threats and oddities stand out to him like cracks in glass. Something feels off. His gaze flicks to mirrored panels along the terminal walls, catching glimpses of movement. A man whose face stays turned too long, a figure matching his pace a little too closely. A faint twitch of suspicion pulls at his mind. Dwayne, he's slowing down, Max whispers into the comms, his fingers dancing over the keyboard. The feed on the monitor tightens on Davis's profile. Dwayne leans forward, the tension in his body visible as a bead of sweat trails down his neck. This is Davis at his most dangerous, watchful, unraveling every thread of his surroundings with surgical precision. Max, patch into the PA system, Dwayne orders, his voice taut. We need a broad announcement, something that forces his attention and makes him question the routine. Max's fingers fly across the keys, and the airport's announcement system crackles to life. The disembodied voice echoes above the hum of the terminal. Attention! All arriving passengers from Gate B21, please proceed to Terminal C for baggage claim due to a routing change. Repeat. All arriving passengers from Gate B21, please proceed to Terminal C for baggage claim. Davis's eyes narrow, his jaw tightening. The announcement is unexpected. His mind ticks through the possibilities. Legitimate change or a deliberate ploy? Protocol dictates he assume the latter. Slowly he turns, scanning the terminal with a calculated sweep. Dwayne watches the monitor intently. He can almost feel the gears turning in Davis's mind, every suspicion weighing on him like stones on a scale. He's moving, but he's on high alert, Dwayne mutters. His team stiffens, their eyes glued to the screens as Davis approaches a choke point, a narrow walkway leading to Terminal C. Operative 2, adjust position, Dwayne commands into his earpiece. On the screen, a figure shifts near a coffee kiosk, blending seamlessly with the crowd. Davis pauses, his head tilting slightly. A shadow, a flicker, something tugs at the edge of his awareness. He's reading us, Max breathes. No, Dwayne counters, his mind racing. He's following protocol, ensuring he isn't boxed in, but we can use that. Trigger an overhead flicker, make it look like a power fluctuation. Above Davis, the lights flicker, a single pulse like a nervous heartbeat. His eyes snap upward and he shifts, positioning himself near a column. It's instinct, seeking cover while maintaining a vantage point. He's cornering himself without realizing it. Dwayne exhales, the tension in his chest loosening. Davis's instincts are flawless, but tonight they will lead him straight into the trap. Hold positions, Dwayne says firmly. He's exactly where we need him. Now, we wait for the next move. The glow of the overhead lights stabilizes, but the brief flicker lingers in Davis's thoughts. His pulse remains steady but elevated, his muscles coiled beneath his coat. In the control room, Dwayne studies the screen, every shift in Davis's posture telling a story. Operative 2, Dwayne whispers into the mic, get ready to move on my signal. The operative nods imperceptibly, their figure blending into the crowd. Davis checks a nearby clock, a habit ingrained by years of high-stakes operations. The minutes stretch, his thoughts looping back to the flicker, the announcement. Paranoia and logic clash in his mind, each fighting for dominance. Max, Dwayne says quietly, another announcement, call for security at the far end of Terminal C. Make it sound urgent, but not panicked. The PA crackles again. Attention, security personnel needed at Gate C17. Assistance required. Repeat. Security needed at Gate C17. Davis's gaze shifts, his brow furrowing deeper. His internal battle intensifies, each second pushing him closer to a decision. Now, Operative 2, Dwayne commands, his voice a blade cutting through the tension. The operative moves, their steps fluid and practiced, slipping into Davis's blind spot. The delicate dance begins. Davis steps toward the escalators leading to baggage claim, his movements deliberate but measured. The briefcase in his grip loosens slightly as he adjusts it, the strain on his knuckles easing for just a moment. The operative moves closer, their steps syncing with the flow of the crowd until the space between them narrows to a whisper. With a sleight of hand as deft as a magician's, they release a slim, pre-fitted tool that adheres to the clasp of Davis's briefcase as they pass, their fingers grazing the leather so lightly it's imperceptible. Davis tenses instantly, his eyes snapping up with a flicker of suspicion darkening his expression. He glances sideways, scanning for anything out of place, but all he sees is the back of a hurried traveler disappearing into the crowd. His brows knit together, his grip on the briefcase tightening until his knuckles turn white against the dark leather. "Max, engage the secondary distraction now," Dwayne orders, his voice calm but laced with urgency. The terminal's ambient noise shifts abruptly as a loud mechanical groan echoes from one of the baggage carousels further down the hall. The sound ripples through the space, drawing the attention of nearby travelers and causing a momentary wave of confusion. Davis's head tilts as he reassesses his surroundings, his grip on the briefcase unyielding, though his focus wavers just enough. It's all the operative needs. They slip behind a nearby column and press a button on their wrist device. The slim tool on Davis's briefcase activates with a barely audible click, releasing the latch. The operative's heart pounds as they mentally trace the next steps, the actions that will either seal their success or expose them entirely. Davis begins walking again, the overhead announcement calling passengers to Terminal C for baggage claim echoing faintly above the hum of the crowd. His stride is deliberate, each step slower than the last, as if something is gnawing at the back of his mind. The operative shadows him, their gaze locked on the briefcase now swaying slightly in rhythm with his movements. As Davis nears the baggage claim entrance, a cluster of passengers jostles past him, creating a chaotic moment of shifting bodies and luggage. The operative moves in, their hands slipping into the loosened flap of the briefcase, with the precision of relentless practice. Their fingers find the envelope, smooth and cool against their gloved touch, and extract it in one fluid motion, quick enough to disturb neither the air nor Davis's focus. Davis shifts abruptly, a muscle in his jaw ticking as his eyes sweep the crowd. His scowl deepens, suspicion curling in the lines of his face, but the operative is already slipping away. They merge seamlessly with a small group of tourists trailing suitcases, the envelope now secure in a coat pocket modified specifically for this kind of extraction. "Item acquired," the operative whispers into their comms, their voice steady, though the relief beneath their professionalism is palpable. Dwayne exhales sharply, his tension mirrored by the collective breath the control room releases in unison. "Good. Move to the extraction point. Now." On the monitors, Davis stands near the carousel, his eyes flitting over the crowd with hawk-like intensity. The briefcase remains clutched in his hand, his knuckles tight, as he tries to piece together the unease clawing at his chest. But the operative is already gone, and the envelope is en route to a secure drop point, far from Davis's reach. The tension in the control room is suffocating, every flicker of light and beep from the monitors a reminder of the high stakes at play. Dwayne leans forward, his elbows planted on the table, his eyes fixed on the live footage of Davis weaving through the terminal. Something gnaws at the edge of his mind, a whisper of doubt that refuses to be ignored. The retrieval feels too clean, too simple. A chill runs down his spine, the kind that has saved his life more times than he cares to count. He turns to Max, his voice sharp. "Pull up the security footage from Atlanta. I want to see Davis going through check-in." Max hesitates only briefly before his fingers fly over the keyboard. Grainy footage from the TSA checkpoint in Atlanta fills the screen, the timestamp rolling as Davis approaches. Dwayne's gaze sharpens, scanning every movement, searching for the detail that will unravel the knot tightening in his chest. Seconds drag like hours until he sees it. A glint on the screen, a moment so brief most would miss it. There, Dwayne says, his voice cutting through the hum of the room. He exhales slowly, the realization settling heavily in his gut. What we got from the briefcase was the decoy. The real thumb drive is on his keychain. Max's eyes widen. You're sure? Dwayne nods, his jaw tightening. Someone as paranoid and skilled as Davis wouldn't make it that easy. We need to move, now. Get the backup team in position. Denver's baggage claim hums with the clatter of suitcases and the shuffle of weary travelers. The air smells faintly metallic, mingling with the recycled chill of the terminal. Davis approaches the conveyor belt, his eyes scanning the space, the briefcase still firmly in his left hand. His keys hang from a loop on his belt, innocuous yet critical. Two uniformed figures step forward just as Davis reaches for his bag, their movements calm but deliberate. Sir, we need to conduct a routine inspection. Step aside, please, one of them says, their tone firm yet professional. Davis's eyes narrow, irritation flashing across his features. He opens his mouth to argue but stops himself, protocol overriding his instinct. He steps aside, jaw clenched, as the agents deftly swap the tags on his bag. When he opens it moments later, his eyes widen at the sight. An array of neon-colored sex toys, unmarked bundles of cash, and small bags of white powder spill into view. The controlled mask he wears fractures, his face flushing red as nearby passengers murmur. Sir, I'm afraid we'll need to conduct a more thorough search, the agent says, their voice neutral. Please step into the private screening area. This is absurd. Davis growls, his voice low and dangerous. I'm CIA. I need to call my superiors. That will have to wait until after the search, the agent replies, unbothered, guiding him toward a side room. Dwayne watches from the control room, adrenaline spiking as the backup team maneuvers into position. The scanner hums to life, its presence looming over the room. We'll need to scan your belongings, including your keys, the agent states. Do you have anything that could be compromised? Davis hesitates, the brief crack in his composure widening. Yes, I don't want my thumb drive scanned. It's on my keys. It has pictures of my daughters. Dwayne's lips curve into a grim smile. He whispers, Gotcha. You don't have any children, Davis. On screen, the team works seamlessly. The thumb drive is extracted in a smooth, practiced motion, hidden before Davis can react. The strip search concludes, and the agents step back. A new TSA agent enters the room and speaks to the other agents in an authoritative tone. We found the owner of the baggage. Their tags were mixed up. Go to room C and stall him. Homeland is en route. You're free to go, sir. Apologies for the inconvenience. One of the agents proclaim. Davis reclaims his items, his jaw tight as his eyes sweep the room for the unseen threat he knows is lurking. His grip on the briefcase tightens, his body taut with unresolved tension. But the damage is done. Watching from afar, Dwayne finally leans back in his chair, his posture relaxing only slightly. The real thumb drive is in their hands, and Agent Carter Davis is left holding the shattered pieces of a puzzle only he understands. Dwayne stands at the epicenter of the command room, the soft glow of dozens of monitors casting sharp angles across his face. Maps, intelligence reports, and security camera feeds flicker before him, the room alive with the low hum of agents speaking into headsets and the steady whir of computer fans. The air pulses with the weight of what has just transpired, a success that tested every ounce of his mental, physical, and emotional resilience. He draws in a deep, measured breath, allowing himself a fleeting moment of satisfaction before the enormity of the next phase settles over him like a heavy mantle. The stakes have shifted. No longer is it just about retrieving the remaining copies of Dalon. Now, it is about leveraging this covert network into an instrument for meaningful change. The shadowy group Celeste has forged, with its hidden operatives and tendrils reaching into the underbelly of power, holds the potential to reshape not only their immediate world, but the entire system that has oppressed and manipulated countless lives. Yet, walking this path means treading the razor's edge between justice and vengeance, disruption and chaos. Dwayne's eyes, sharp and unwavering despite the exhaustion gnawing at him, sweep the room. He knows this is where the real battle begins. The retrievals are only the first step. Now, he must ensure this newfound power isn't squandered or corrupted by the very system they aim to dismantle. Around him, the operatives sense the shift. Their movements become deliberate, their voices quieter, tinged with an awareness of the dangerous terrain they are about to traverse. His mind races through the list of deep cover agents, operatives trained to operate so covertly that even their handlers wouldn't know when or where they might strike. These embedded agents are an imminent threat that must be neutralized, but delicately, without sparking internal war or drawing attention to the network's operations. It is a balancing act between stealth and decisive action, where one misstep could unravel everything they have built. And then there is Pennyman, the wild card. The man knows too much, has seen too much, and yet remains a prisoner, a loose end that could jeopardize the entire operation. Dwayne's jaw tightens as he considers the options. Release him and risk exposure, eliminate him and compromise the very values they claim to fight for, or find a third path that safeguards both their integrity and their mission. The room buzzes with subdued anticipation as Dwayne's thoughts crystallize. Every action from this point forward must be calculated, deliberate, and aimed at a singular purpose, dismantling the corruption without collapsing the system itself. It is a mission requiring more than just skill. It demands conviction and unity from everyone in this room. Together, they stand at the threshold of a new era, one that could reshape the future if navigated correctly. Dwayne's voice cuts through the ambient noise, firm and resolute. We move forward carefully. Every piece on the board must serve a purpose. We dismantle what's rotten, build where there's strength, and keep the rest guessing. He turns, his eyes locking with each face that looks to him for direction. In their expressions, he sees the fire of determination, the unyielding resolve that mirrors his own. They are ready for whatever comes next, and so is he. The room remains charged, the team silently processing the enormity of what they have accomplished. Dwayne knows the retrievals are a victory, but his instincts scream that the battle is far from over. That ominous feeling is 100% real. He just hasn't seen it yet. Meanwhile, in Allen, Texas, Detective Neil Walker pulls into the quiet suburban street, his headlights catching Detective Julius Ray Wilson standing by his car, arms crossed and face grim. Walker parks and steps out, the cold air biting at his face as he strides toward his colleague. "Ray," Walker greets, his tone sharp but measured. "What's the situation?" Wilson straightens and gestures toward the house. "Just spoke with the wife. She said Brian went to bed early, complaining of a headache. He's been asleep the whole time, no disturbances." Walker exhales, his breath clouding in the cold. "All right, let's not waste time. Let's check on him." The two detectives begin walking toward the house when a piercing scream cuts through the stillness. Both men freeze for a split second before bolting up the driveway and through the front door. Inside, the wife's screams echo from upstairs. Walker grabs Wilson's arm as they rush toward the staircase. "No guns," he orders. "Leave the pepper spray. Tasers only." Wilson nods, tossing his pepper spray canister onto a side table as they draw their tasers and ascend the stairs. The sounds of a struggle grow louder, thumps, muffled shouting, and another scream, more desperate this time. Then, a gunshot. Walker and Wilson sprint up the remaining steps, their boots thudding heavily against the hardwood. At the top, they find the wife staggering out of a bedroom, blood smeared on her hands and panic etched on her face. Walker and Wilson freeze, thinking she's been shot. "Have you been shot, ma'am?" Detective Walker asks. "No," she cries, clutching her hand. He bit me, and he bit our daughter. I begged him to stop, and he wouldn't. I had to." The words hang in the air for a moment before another scream erupts from the room behind her. This time, it's the daughter's voice. Walker and Wilson exchange a glance, then move past the wife and into the room. The daughter stumbles out, sobbing and clutching her shoulder. Behind her, Brian Cole stands in the center of the room, his face twisted in a grotesque mask of rage and confusion. Blood streaks his lips and chin, dripping onto his shirt. His eyes are wild, darting between the detectives and the doorway as though trying to process his surroundings. "Cole," Walker says, his voice steady but firm. "Calm down, we're here to help." For a moment, Cole seems to hear him. His body relaxes slightly, and he takes a step back before sitting on the edge of the bed. The tension in the room eases just enough for both detectives to exchange a cautious glance. "Stay here," Walker says softly to Wilson, keeping his taser trained on Cole while inching closer. "Cole, just stay calm. No one else needs to get hurt. Cole nods slowly, his breathing ragged but steady. Then his gaze shifts toward the hallway, where his daughter peeks out, her face pale and tear-streaked. His demeanor changes instantly. "That's not my daughter," he growls, his voice low and guttural. His eyes narrow and his muscles tense like a coiled spring. "Brian, don't!" Walker shouts, but it's too late. Cole lunges toward the hallway, his hands outstretched. Both detectives fire their tasers simultaneously, the barbs sinking into his chest. Electricity surges through Cole's body, and he collapses to the floor, convulsing violently. The jolts last for several long seconds before his body goes still. Walker and Wilson cautiously approach, keeping their tasers trained on Cole's motionless form. After ensuring he's unconscious, they handcuff him and secure a spit hood over his head to prevent further biting. Walker exhales, his hands trembling slightly as he steps back. "We've got him," Wilson says, his voice tight but relieved. "We'll call for backup and—" Cole's body jerks violently, a guttural roar ripping from his throat, raw and primal. With a sickening crack, he snaps his wrists, the cuffs biting deep as blood spurts from torn flesh. The crimson stains splatter onto the carpet, vivid against the pale fibers, as he rises with an unnatural, almost inhuman speed. "Stay back!" Walker yells, his voice strained with both command and fear, but Cole is already a blur of motion. He launches past the detectives, his powerful strides thundering toward the hallway where his daughter stands, frozen in wide-eyed terror. The air feels electric, charged with the weight of impending horror. Time seems to slow as Cole reaches for her, his bloodied hands outstretched, his shadow enveloping the trembling girl. A gunshot shatters the moment, its deafening crack echoing through the room. Cole's head snaps back violently, his body halting mid-stride as if struck by an invisible force. He collapses to the floor in a heap, limbs crumpling unnaturally. Blood pools beneath him, spreading in dark rivulets across the carpet. His lifeless eyes stare unblinking, glassy and void. Behind him, the wife stands motionless, her hands trembling violently as she lowers the gun. Tears streak her pale face, her breaths ragged and uneven. The room plunges into a heavy silence, broken only by the muffled sobs of the daughter and the wife's desperate gasps for air. Walker lowers his taser slowly, his grip slackening as his mind races to comprehend the scene before him. This isn't just madness, it's something far more sinister, calculated in a way that chills him to the core. The tension in the room lingers, oppressive and unyielding, as a realization creeps into Walker's thoughts. Whatever drove Cole wasn't human, and it might not be over. Detective Neil Walker stands outside the last crime scene, the frigid night air biting at his skin. The chaos of the evening lingers in his mind as he methodically reviews updates from his team. The pattern is clearer now, though no less horrifying. Barry Meeks leapt to his death from a parking garage after succumbing to hallucinations and paranoia. Pepper spray had been used, amplifying his psychotic state. Roger Cale impaled himself on a scythe in his barn after a gruesome bout of self-mutilation. His wife revealed she had used pepper spray in self-defense when he became violent. Darren Watts found lifeless in his bathtub, no visible trauma, no signs of struggle. A haunting, silent death. Leo Simmons ran headlong into a 13-point deer mount, impaling himself through the skull and chest. No pepper spray was used, but his behavior was similarly erratic and unexplainable. Brian Cole, shot by his wife after biting both her and their daughter and breaking handcuffs to attack again. Tased multiple times, but still displayed inhuman strength and aggression. The initial reports trickle in, confirming what Walker had begun to suspect. Every victim's system contained a lethal cocktail of fentanyl, heroin, and an array of psychedelics, including LSD and PCP. The combination was potent enough to cause extreme hallucinations, paranoia, and inhuman strength before ultimately leading to organ failure or fatal injuries. The lab's note chills Walker. The mix of substances suggests deliberate tampering. This is not a cocktail someone would ingest willingly. It's highly experimental and dangerous beyond reason. Walker processes the reports, taking detailed notes for his case file. He speaks briefly with each detective, piecing together the evening's grim puzzle. Dexter Brown recounts the horrors in the barn and the wife's desperate use of pepper spray. Keith Johnson confirms the eerie calm surrounding Darren Watts' death, a haunting contrast to the chaos of the others. Tony Stargill provides a detailed account of Leo Simmons's manic charge and the visceral end that followed. Julius Ray Wilson adds the final piece, describing Brian Cole's horrifying transformation and ultimate demise. The deaths, though connected by the Potts case and the toxicology results, still leave many questions unanswered. Walker knows there's a deeper truth hidden in the chaos. The weight of the night settles over him as he slides the phone back into his pocket. The deaths of those 7 men, tied so inexorably to the injustice of Potts's case, feel less like resolution and more like retribution. Walker looks up at the dark, starless sky. For the first time all night, the silence feels final. The rumble of an engine cuts through the heavy silence as a dark SUV pulls up to the scene, its headlights casting sharp beams across the blood-streaked driveway. The engine dies, and the door creaks open, revealing a woman in a tailored coat stepping out with measured precision. Dr. Melanie Sims, the medical examiner, approaches with an air of calm authority, her sharp eyes taking in every detail as she moves closer to the house. "Walker," she greets, her tone steady but tinged with curiosity. Her gaze sweeps the scene, Cole's crumpled body, the blood pooling like a macabre tapestry, the trembling wife clutching the gun, and the daughter huddled in a corner, tears streaking her face. Walker straightens, his shoulders sagging slightly under the weight of what has just unfolded. "Dr. Sims," he replies, his voice weary, "you're going to want to see this." Melanie nods, stepping carefully over the threshold, her boots making faint impressions in the blood-soaked carpet. She crouches near Cole's body, her gloved hands hovering just above the gruesome wounds as her trained eye catalogues every detail. The tension in the room hangs thick, the air almost suffocating. After surveying everything and taking notes in her notepad and delegating responsibilities to her subordinates, without a word, she stands and retrieves her phone from her pocket. Her fingers move swiftly over the screen, the glow casting an eerie light on her face. She types a brief message, her expression tightening as she hits send. The recipient's name is simply marked unknown. The message reads, "Darwin Potts III's case resolved." She slips the phone back into her pocket, her demeanor composed yet unreadable as she turns to Walker. "Secure the scene and isolate the witnesses. I'll need full reports on every detail, please." "Hopefully this is finally over," she says firmly, her tone leaving no room for argument. Walker watches her carefully, a faint unease prickling at the edge of his thoughts. He doesn't ask whom she texted, he knows better. Instead, he nods, turning his focus to the stunned wife and daughter as Dr. Sims moves with purpose, her presence a chilling reminder that the answers they seek may uncover something far darker than they anticipated. Darwin Potts III's case resolved. Darwin Potts III's case resolved. Darwin Potts III's case resolved.